For Audata, the operating system for modern media, find them at audata.io. Dear listener, welcome to the Quarter Hour. And this is the third in our three-part interview series with the legendary Paul Thompson. Paul was the Managing Director of DMG Radio Australia, which started the Nova Network, and of course the founder and CEO of Austereo. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Vega, the failure of Vega and why Paul thinks that happened. He's also going to make a little comment on Kyle and Jackie O. I managed to squeeze a little bit out of him on that front. But where we start today's conversation is where we left off in part 2, talking about 5AA, the talk station in Adelaide that was the first owned by DMG Radio Australia, which was necessary to get people to come on board and join what would become the Nova Network. So we start off by talking about the people that joined 5AA.
The people that came in through that time were best of class. The people that were being recruited for this network, for this license that yet didn't exist, were actually adding a huge amount of value. You know, Keith Thomas's time as general manager of 5AA transformed that radio station from sales, content, programming, news, everything around that. It was a different radio station as a result. So
I will tell the Keith Thomas story now that you've raised his name again.
I was leaving it long enough for you to jump in.
It's only, he only told me the other day, and I knew at the time, but I'd completely forgotten. It was so much has happened since then. But we launched, as I said earlier, the Nova Network with a lot of new music. The Sounds Different concept applied to everything yeah. Including never more than 2 ads in a row. No more than 2 ads in a row was bloody hard going.
You mean financially?
It was hard selling the concept because I think we can safely say, really, the advertising industry, in the end, didn't embrace it. It was too hard.
Too hard, yeah.
And I understand that, but people like Keith Thomas had to sell it. And all the people that he brought in and trained and whatever. And there are no doubt people listening to this podcast now who are part of that. Very, very hard. Almost impossibly hard. And he was reminding me the other day, American Rosso were outliers. They were rebels. They were great rebels. I loved them. And that... They were the essence of Sounds Different in the beginning, and they were great. But poor old Keith, finding it so hard to sell the concept of never more than 2 ads in a row. Finally, they got Pepsi Cola came in. Pepsi came in, they agreed to sponsor the entire breakfast show, which is risky stuff, not as risky as maybe, as some people would say, sponsoring Kyle and Jackie O, I don't know, but it was risky.
Yeah.
It was risky. And finally he got them. Went in there, and on the morning of the launch of the sponsorship of Pepsi Cola on Nova, Sydney, Rosso at 6 a.m. opened up a can of Coke on air and drank it, got sip by sip progressively through the time, saying, "Up you, Pepsi Cola."
Oh, jeez.
And it's a wonder it didn't kill Keith. I don't know how he survived, but he got through it.
Thank goodness he's a healthy guy. He might not have. Well, and Rosso, actually, I've been talking to Rosso a bit lately, actually, and I think he looks back on those times because there's a Pepsi story, there's a McDonald's story, there's quite a Harvey Norman's, there's all those big brands that it took a lot for Keith and his team to convince to even buy into the.
Yeah.
And I think American Rosso was so famously
anti-commercial.
Yes, I was going to say hostile, maybe not hostile, but they were certainly willing to kind of stick it up and advertise it for the sake of content. That it's again another one of those moments that's quite remarkable. I think I'm reminded of that phrase of "it's better to be a pirate than join the Navy." There's just something more interesting and enjoyable. You still get to go on the high seas, but why would you go under the command of someone when you can chart a course, which is interesting. Paul, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do have one area that I don't think has been talked about a lot, and you can correct me, and maybe it's because you don't want to talk about it. But I do want to talk about Vega, because I think that the Nova story is very well told. everything from the dirty tricks and the bogus letters and all of the obstacles that had to be overcome for Nova to even exist on day one. In retrospect, the Vega decision to put music and talk effectively on the same format with a couple of ex-ABC personalities and others, on paper makes sense. And I'd imagine at the time, it wouldn't have felt like too much of a risk. Still a risk, but Nova was up and running and there was some success coming. So it would have been...
Success was pretty advanced, really, on Nova.
But there would have been some confidence, I think, that, okay, we've got another license. All right, let's see what we can do here. Do you look back on that and think it was a great format at the wrong time? We know the research probably told us that there were things that the audience said they would like and they actually didn't end up following that behaviour. But in the context of bravery and risk, was Vega at the time of the decision to do Vega a risk?
Yeah, I think it was a mistake, actually. I think we made a mistake. I think, I've never said this before, but I think we started to think we were invincible.
Right.
That we could break every rule in the book, because we'd broken an awful lot of rules with Nova, and we could do it again. We could break every rule, and because we were invincible, it would work again. And it didn't, and it wasn't right. The simple answer is I wouldn't, same time, same place, wouldn't do it again. I would have done something else. Maybe the second version that we did there, which was classic rock, might have been the way to go in the first place, and that might then, with a total commitment, might well have worked well. What has happened, of course, there now with Smooth has been unbelievably successful, and I had no role in that whatsoever. So I take no credit. Kathy O'Connor and
Paul Jackson
are the people who take credit for that. We may have made a better fist of Vega, even though it was wrong, in my view, if there hadn't been a small calamity in my life, which was that I had a stroke. In the, wasn't the immediate launch phase, but it was the sort of secondary launch phase of it. And there was so much pressure on making it work. It was sapping the financial situation that we had created positively with Nova. And so you had Nova making money and doing well on the one hand, and Vega blowing it away on the other. Enormous pressure at that time, and enough pressure that I had a stroke. And off I went to hospital for a while, and I wasn't really a contributor for quite a while.
Right. And
that definitely impacted. I'm not really suggesting that it couldn't have happened. Had I been there, it would have all worked, because I don't necessarily think so. I think it was probably wrong.
Right.
It was a mistake. And the invincible people weren't invincible.
Right.
But and not only were they not invincible, but they were having strokes.
Yes, well.
But that was quite a significant moment that's not probably known or recognised in the life of that radio license at that time. But it does infer that individual things sometimes, maybe it's work-life balance, are factors as well. It's not just all about the job. It can be about other things, health, well-being, and those things. The only other very brief and general comment that I would make is that we're in talking about bravery, and I won't go into any detail on this because it is a legal situation and there's almost nothing you can say that doesn't get too close to that. But I have to say that the contractual situation, the decision on all the parties to contract between ARN and Kyle and Jackie O was as brave a decision as there has ever been in radio.
Full stop. Well said. I was going to ask you about it, but you've answered it very well. Paul, thank you for taking the time. I know that looking back isn't in your DNA. You'd like to look forward every single day still. And I also know that there are some parts of the story that you're more than happy to talk about, and to keep that legacy alive, I think is important. I think I almost now feel so spoilt having been in that environment that I can't do normal. I struggle with normal. I look for opportunities to do different and brave. And I think, that's, maybe there was something in me, but at the same time, I think I was at the right place at the right time for that flame to come alive. So, and I know there are many people who will be listening to this who would say the same thing, that the belief and bravery connection is very important, but you can't believe on your own. You do need to have someone who believes more than you do. And I think for all of us that have come through a career as a result of your lobbying, investment, hard work, dare I say, health concerns as well, thank you for being braver than us, because you helped us find our own bravery.
All I can say is it's been a great pleasure, both talking to you and looking back. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
So there you have it. I really enjoyed that chat with Paul. It's always great to catch up with him. And Paul's legacy lives on. He is not only a keen radio listener these days, but also his daughter Samantha, as he says. Sam is the head of content at SEN, looking after a great stable of personalities, just like her dad did at 5AA. Now, I'm really keen to hear your stories of bravery and belief. Have you had a CEO, a mentor, or a leader that you really loved working for? Was there someone in your radio career that you thought, absolutely, they demonstrate exactly the same traits and habits that Paul just talked about there? Obviously, Paul's a very modest person, so you'd never expect him to come on a podcast like this and shout from the rooftops about his achievement. But I really thought getting him to talk about his own bravery and where that comes from could be really helpful for you, not only to identify where it exists in your career and to be grateful for that, because I certainly am, but also to encourage you to take a few more risks, to believe in something, to know enough to make good decisions, and get a team around you that can help deliver on that belief. I'd love to hear your stories, so just drop me an email, wade@thequarterhour.com. You can join us on our Instagram page, DM us there. And please share your stories. I think bravery and belief is so important in a creative industry like radio. And now, more than ever, we need people who are willing to take risks. Calculated risks for sure, but playing safe won't win in 2026 and beyond. But don't be too brave. Don't take too big a risk, as we're seeing at the moment play out in some courtrooms across Australia. All right, that's all we have for today. Hope you enjoyed the episodes, and if you did, please share them, and please don't forget to go and rate our podcast on Apple Podcast, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help other people find the Quarter Hour. But for now, dear listener, that's been the Quarter Hour. See you again soon.